And Priscilla says, I want to be a hairstylist when I grow up because they dye your hair and cut your hair. They also decorate your hair and do your nails any color. And they wear aprons. I just can't wait, President McMaster, and I'm sure you feel the same way, that maybe when one of these hairstylists aspires to make hair grow, I mean, it's been a long time since either one of us heard, I'm going to cut your bangs now.
Right.
So just something to think
I would drop by and visit her.
Yeah. Secondly, I just really a heartfelt thanks to all the fire departments and all the law enforcement agencies that aided us in the fire last week at Jackson and Davidson Street. Although certainly the structure is a total loss. No one was seriously injured directly from the fire at all. Just we had a couple firefighters slip and fall on the ice. But I also want to thank the community. They've been very cooperative. Certainly, I know many have driven by and gawkers. But all in all, people have respected the yellow barricade. But it is important to note that someone could be seriously injured if they go inside that barricaded area, and I know we've had a few people encroach, so that shouldn't happen. I have had a couple conversations with Mr. Howerton, Al Howerton, the business owner. He's doing well. He is working through the process now of rebuilding, and just today he assured me that literally that building will rise from the ashes, and that business will continue on here in Defiance, so that was good to hear. We sent a nixle out earlier this week letting the public know that the construction of the Ingle roundabout at the corner of Cleveland and Ottawa Avenue is beginning. Utility work. There'll be a lot of utilities in that area, just about any utility you can think of. Electric, gas, water, sewer. I believe there's some fiber connections through there. That construction is starting. It will go through the summer. And hopefully, by the time school starts, we will have our third roundabout there, and I think that will be welcomed by everyone. I get asked about it a lot. And a reminder, too, when the actual construction of the roundabout starts, Ottawa Avenue will be closed completely to through traffic for a period of time. I can't tell you what that is exactly, but it will be a period of time, and traffic will be safely rerouted around, and all will be good. And that's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leonard isn't here this evening. Mr. O'Donnell.
I have nothing for you at this time.
Mr. Leonard.
The only thing I have is some purchase orders to bring to the attention of council. Board of Control recently approved purchase orders that fell between the $15,000 and $25,000 threshold that we at least informed the council of. One was for $15,500. It was to Pelton Environmental Products. It's these would be for membrane diffusers for the aeration tanks at the wastewater treatment plant. A second one was for $19,362. This was to purchase 2 mowers, I believe, for the cemetery. There were several others, but they're either statutorily required payments, for example, to the Defiance County Law Library. There are numerous ones for software annual maintenance agreements that we already have the agreements in place and approved by council. And then there are a handful of purchase orders that meet the threshold, but they're for chemicals at the water and wastewater plant, which again, we already have the authority to enter into those. So that's all I've got.
That's it?
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us to this evening's legislative items. We have three ordinances and 1 resolution for discussion. Would you read the caption for the first, Ms. Elders?
Third reading by caption only, an ordinance vacating a portion of Adams Street between the Fells and Adams Addition and Waverly Heights, revised plat and accepting a permanent easement.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the clerk stated, this is the third of 3 required readings for the right-of-way vacation in this edition by voluntary petition pursuant to 905.19A. The city has obtained or is in the process of obtaining a recorded easement from the applicant so that we can access the combined sewer and the culvert that's on this current right-of-way. Other than that, though, the unimproved right-of-way only serves as a sort of shared driveway between the 2 properties, and there is a shared drive agreement on file with the city. So my recommendation for you tonight, pursuant to Rule 19.4, is, you've got 3 options. You can make a motion to refer the bill to a member for more input. You can make a motion to adopt, or you can motion to table. Motioning to let consideration of the matter lay is not an option, given that it's the 3rd reading.
So we do have those 3 options. Are there any questions for Mr. O'Donnell before we take any motions? All right. Mr. Resty?
Yeah, if there's no other questions, motion to adopt.
We have no other questions. A motion to adopt. Second, Mr. Mast?
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
And Mr. Engel?
Yes.
All right. And this ordinance is adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance vacating the right-of-way between lots 36 and 66 of South Defiance Edition.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you. This is another voluntary petition under Section 905.19A. It's another unimproved alley, part of which I believe is a shared driveway between the 2 properties. And there is a north-south alley. If you look at the GIS map behind the properties, which the alley leads to, right here. But it's my understanding you can't really get through to that at this part being unimproved. I have to rely on the Google Maps because the mayor doesn't like to get his car dirty on the lunch tours. So the city's not really losing any functionality here. It's my understanding that the 2 properties owners on either side have executed a shared driveway agreement that assigns both access and maintenance responsibilities. So my recommendation to you tonight would be a motion to let consideration of the matter lie for at least another 2 readings. And just as a reminder, if you may have a personal interest in this, it's my recommendation that you abstain and note that abstention for the record.
Any questions or comments before we take any motions?
I'd like to abstain, please.
Mrs. Crutch would like to abstain. Any questions? All right. We have a motion. Mr. Hancock.
Motion to let lie.
Motion to let lie.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast. So as far as this issue to let lie, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Was that unopposed?
That was in favor or opposed to the motion to let lie, Mr. Corbett?
In favor, sir. That's an aye.
All right, I think we have a little bit of lag. Okay. All right, then we will let this issue lie.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance authorizing the use of CARES Act funding to provide economic assistance to the Defiance area YMCA.
Mr. Leonard.
Yes, thank you. As council is aware, through the course of 2020 and the pandemic, the city began receiving CARES Act funding, federal dollars that were provided through the state to the county and ultimately to the city in order to relieve some of the burdens of the coronavirus pandemic and in fact to purchase health and safety related equipment. The city has in fact used, let me just say, we got a first round payment, we got a second round payment, and the administration at the time was talking in terms of purchasing safety equipment for the fire department, updating our technology here in the building and in the other city facilities for remote meetings, more powerful servers, better email, beefing up those kind of things to encourage remote working and work from home if necessary, social distancing, if you will. We had pondered the notion of making some of those funds available, similar to what Defiance County did to local businesses who were impacted adversely by the shutdowns. And fairly quickly determined that we would not pursue that and not bring an idea like that to the council. We had our own needs, we had our own uncertainty with regards to tax revenues, and then a third round of CARES Act money came in, and then a fourth round of CARES Act money came in, and then the Bureau of Workers' Comp threw $600,000 at the city along with every other entity in the state. We really ended up quite a windfall at the end of the year, and I haven't talked to the council much about how the year ended yet in terms of general fund balance. I think we came into the year with about a $3.1 million balance in the general fund. We closed the year with about a $4.2 million. I'm kind of going from memory here, but certainly over $4 million in spite of tax revenues being down 3.5%. The pandemic, back in April and May, we thought we would see 10% losses in revenues. We had a hiring freeze. We weren't sure we were going to have negotiated pay raises for the upcoming police and fire contracts, all of that. And all that came to pass. We had more money. We were in better financial shape than we had anticipated. And late in the game, we did receive a request from the YMCA. YMCA had also received some federal funding. I think they participated in the PPP program for small businesses. They may have even received some other CARES Act money. I'm not sure about that, but
They would have gotten the same workers' comp refunds.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. But they were hit pretty hard, and in particular, Rich Seward, the director over there, had mentioned to us, and then ultimately put in writing request to supplement their child care program, which was hit particularly hard because of parents working from home, being laid off, whatever the circumstances may have been. They lost a lot of enrollment in the child care program. And they have requested that the city use some of its CARES Act money to help them to the tune of $30,000. As I'd said, as I had indicated in an email to the council and maybe in some of the clauses of the ordinance, part of the purpose behind the CARES Act funding was to provide support to local businesses who were adversely affected by the shutdowns. When the request came in, we had pretty much spoken for all the money we had received. I thought there might be a way to work it out if the council wished to help the Y, that we could probably do it from an accounting standpoint. But then very late in the month, I believe it was actually on December 28th, the word came down that we had a deadline of 12/31/2020 to spend all the CARES Act money. 3 days before the end of the year, that deadline was extended by a full year. It made the accounting very easy to free up the $30,000 if council chooses to go this route and pass the ordinance. And if not, the city can still make use of the funds for our own purposes again, because we've got this additional year extension. We'll just put it right back into what we had originally used it for, which was for fire department wages. In any event, what I proposed to do was bring the idea to council. It's council's call. We've taken the steps from the accounting side to make the funds available, make it a legitimate expense and a proper use of the CARES Act funding. But the decision to go forward with whether we make that donation to them is up to you and with this ordinance. I will say they're the only agency that we received a request from. We did not open it up to anyone. We didn't invite anyone to come and ask for our money. But they came along, they're kind of an integral party in the community. Fell on hard times, not unlike a lot of other businesses, but they were the ones that put it on a piece of paper, and that's what you're presented with tonight.
All right. We have questions for Mr. Leonard. Mr. Engel.
I think the thing that bothers me, I think if we do something like this, it could open a can of worms. In other words, somebody else is gonna end up and say, well, you did this for the Y, can't you do this for us? I mean, that's kind of the way I feel on that. Am I 100% against it? No, but I'm not 100% for it either. But I just think if we do this, I think it's gonna open a can of worms. This is, in my opinion.
Mr. Waxler.
Yeah, I guess my question is how much of this money do we have to do things like this with? Perfect example, what Chris has said, where are we gonna start and stop it? I mean, how much money do we have available? Because once we do this, I mean, I don't know how the Y found out we could even do this, I have no idea. But now there's a lot of places out there that suffer, there's a lot of, it all based on they're saying on their, early childhood program and the daycare. We got daycare centers in this town that lost a lot of money. There were some of them that was closed, a long time. So the Y was still open. I know one in particular that spent a lot of money on a machine just to go through and spray everything every day. I just, what is that amount? What money do we have to do this with? Because it's going to open a can of worms, as Mr. Engel said.
Well, the numbers are, the city received a little over $1.2 million in CARES Act funds. We used about $250,000 of that for our own health and safety supplies at the fire department, police department, the technology purchases we've talked about, server updates, the multimedia updates, internet updates, all that kind of thing. And then the rest of it, there were some other miscellaneous purchases, but almost all related to technology in one way or the other, or direct health and safety related purchases. The balance of it, upwards of say $900,000, we used for fire and EMS wages. I should say, the city reimbursed itself through those funds for sick leave, COVID-related sick leave, COVID-related employees who worked from home, employee payroll-related or employee-related issues with people who, early on, we had people who stayed home on administrative leave to accommodate the governor's orders for social distancing. We were trying to cut the workforce down in all the divisions. And so where people could work from home, they worked from home. Where they couldn't work from home, in some cases we had people stay home on administrative leave. We had people who missed time due to the illness, sick time. All of those were eligible expenses to reimburse ourselves with the CARES Act money, and we did that. So it freed up, because the general fund and the police and fire fund are linked. To pay for fire wages with CARES Act money indirectly helps the general fund. And I would say, Steve, we're probably looking at $700,000 or $800,000 that we are to the good after all those other expenditures we're taking account of. Like I said earlier, the general fund balance went from about $3.1 million to over $4 million. So, part of that too is because the hiring freeze, we had vacancies we didn't fill. There was money saved in addition to the new money we received. But, that being said, we go into 2021, our income tax revenues were end of the year down. They could be down well into 2021. We just don't know. So some of it is the notion that we're staying, kind of a rainy day aspect. to preserve our own fund balances if this thing continues to go on and on, to drag on. And that's an unknown, and I don't know the answer to that. You know, I guess I would say that while $30,000 would be a lot of money to almost any other business that came along and asked for it, in the scheme of the 1.2 million we received, we're not giving away, quote unquote, very much of the money that we got. I am as reluctant as anyone, maybe more reluctant to want to part with that money, because I'm always thinking in terms of let's preserve this for the future.
Exactly.
But you know, the ask isn't that big. But I'm not trying to make a judgment call on this at all. It was asked. We thought it was a decision that the council ought to make.
But I think that the unknown is what has gotten us so far, and we don't know. And I don't think we need to be giving money away unless we're gonna give it away to all the businesses that have lost or come and ask for it. And I think right now with what we're doing here, have you got a number out there that you're gonna allow other people to come and ask for money?
In my mind, I wouldn't suggest we entertain any others.
Okay, but why would we entertain one and not
That
the
doesn't anyone
others?
else coming and asking, and then
You
you
know,
gotta
I
answer the
don't
question.
think we can entertain one and not leave that open to everybody else that comes and asks for it. I just think that we're putting ourselves in a bad situation here. You know, the air thing I wanted to know, I mean, I guess if something like this was gonna happen, I believe, my personal opinion is this is something we should have had executive session on and spoke about. And the WICA told us what they've done to help themselves, so we had a better understanding of all this. We have no idea. What did they do to help themselves through this? Did they take cuts? Did they, I don't know. Nobody knows. So I think to just hand them $30,000, we're not gonna do it to everybody, is a bad move. That's my opinion.
Not sure what the grounds for a executive session would have been.
You perhaps could have got it under applicant for economic development assistance, that kind of thing.
I mean, I just think it's something we should have sat and talked about instead of just seeing it in the email and then it's an ordinance, I think that we should have, the Y should explain to us what it is that they lost, which everybody lost. I mean, there's nobody that won through this.
True.
And there's a lot of people out there that's still hurting and hurting bad that don't have their people back yet. So, and to say that we're gonna stop it at this 30,000 isn't right. But if that's what we're gonna do.
Mrs. Crutch?
I know I had written you a couple emails and you had said that they did do the PPL loan forgiveness grant. Do you know, I know that the states or the government is doing another one. Had they decided that they were gonna file for another loan again, the YMCA?
I certainly don't know what their intentions would be, and I'm not sure we know what's actually gonna be made available. I do not know the answer.
And then also when we did the CARES Act, we had specific guidelines of what we could use that money for. If we give them this $30,000, is that something that we're gonna, do they have the same kind of stipulations of what they can use that money for? Is it specifically for salaries or? I'm not sure, because I know we had stipulations on what we could use that CARES Act for. And if we hand $30,000 over, what's to say they could use it for whatever?
Yeah, well, and again, I'm not trying to argue one way or the other, but just giving you the facts, one of the stated objectives or an allowed expense or an allowed use of the CARES Act funding that came to us was to make it available to small businesses who were adversely affected by the shutdowns. And that's as specific as the language got. I can tell you that, when the law first came down, I was of the mind, we can't use any of this money because the language seemed so restrictive on how it could be used. As time went along, the federal government kept passing down further guidance and more further guidance, and it seemed to broaden it. I think I can't explain why. You can guess why, but the uses seemed to become broader and broader and opened up the door to a lot more, let's say, creative uses that would be acceptable.
I too am just a little concerned in this because I think of, we're gonna have it in the paper now and other people are going to say, hey, they're giving $30,000 to the Y. I'm gonna come in from my childcare place, like Steve was saying, that there's a lot of them that had to close their doors, so I'm a little concerned on this one too.
I think the feeling on the administration, again, was that maybe the Y is a little bit unique in as an entity in the community, but that's really not for me to say.
Mr. Rusty?
I think with probably with some of the questions that have been raised here, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to maybe table this, possibly bring in the director of the YMCA to basically answer some questions, review our budget, because basically that's what it really comes down to is how does this affect our budget? And then also, for the most part, it's something that, if we can get answers to some of our questions, that maybe it'll be easier for us to basically make a decision. One of the things I look at is we've always had the community ask the city for assistance, even before the CARES Act, before the pandemic. They've always come to us, and we've always sorted it out based on what the request was. And so that's always been something that council has always done. And then also the considerations from the Board of Control and what they recommend to us to consider. Now, the only thing it comes down to it is that we do have extra money. Can we do something else with it? Possibly. Is this something that we really want to do? I think it goes to a good organization, and also it goes to a good need. In my opinion, I think it's something that I would support, and I would vote yes on. It's not something that we would probably do all the time. There are exceptions to what some of the needs are in the community and some of the things that we would probably say yes to. Or, if it's not something to what the majority of council wants, we could say no. But I do think it's a good need. It's a good organization. But if we do have some questions, I say maybe table this and then bring in the YMCA. Let's talk to them and maybe review our budgets or do something like that. And hopefully we can get some answers to our questions.
Well said. Mr. Hancock?
Yeah, with this CARES fund, is there a deadline? Do we have all year to utilize those funds? It's not a specific.
Well, technically, John, yes, but we've spoken for every dollar we've received, other than this 30,000 that I was able to make a journal entry to free up again. All the other dollars that we received in anticipation of needing to account for it by 12/31, we did.
Allocated.
Yeah, and so there's no more money. We don't have the money from the CARES Act directly to give away anymore. Again, we were able to do kind of a last minute journal entry to move this money back from fire wages to freed up in the local coronavirus fund. So if the council wanted to give the money to the Y, we could do that. If we choose not to do that, I'm gonna move that 30,000 right back into fire salaries, and there'll be no money left. Now, indirectly, the general fund is in better shape than we thought, that kind of thing. But in terms of the restrictions and the use and the deadline on the CARES Act funding, that will have passed. We will have used it all.
I guess along with that, was there a reason why it was 30? Last time it wasn't maybe 15 or 20. Just a number that decided to.
I think I think Rich Seward had indicated that the program had lost $80,000 through the course of the year.
And I agree with Mr. Waxler in the sense that there's a lot of community organizations, even similar to what we have here as a child care program, that has lost substantially. You're looking at at least 40% on the ones that I reached out and spoke to as far as that. So, I think the YMCA is a great organization, but I also feel that if we contribute to one, we're going to have to contribute to the other ones as well. But that's just the side that I have. So, no, thank you for answering my question.
Thank you. Mr. Mast?
I just want to state, I think, for me, my thought is that it'd be a mistake to think that we're on the far side, the good side of this pandemic thing. And that we're sitting on this mountain of money and we just want to start handing it out. I think it needs to stay in the city coffers where the taxpayer dollar to operate the city, because there may be more coming up. And there may be 30,000 that we're gonna need somewhere. I mean, it's just, I don't think it's over yet, and by all instances of what you read in the news, it's changes on a daily basis, and we're certainly not on the far side of it. And I think, I agree with everyone else that you're opening up a breadline here where unfortunately there's a lot of people hurting and a lot of people could use money. I mean, it's just where I'm at, so.
Well said. Mr. Waxler?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on what Joe said. I agree with you, Joe. It's a good organization, and I think it's well spent money. But there again, we gotta realize that we're gonna go into this and bring the Y in the ring. We gotta allow other people to do the same thing. So, I mean, I don't know that that's really somewhere we wanna go. Not putting down the organization at all, I'm not saying that. It's a great organization, but
You don't have to, but that's
yeah,
up to you
yeah.
guys.
Did you have a specific question, Mr. Corbett? Did you have any questions?
No.
I didn't want you to feel ignored.
Some of the stuff I'm having trouble hearing. I'm getting the gist, but the speaker system's not doing well here. So I understand the sentiment. I agree with a lot of these comments. So we'll just move on.
Mr. Resty?
Yeah, it's basically, I just think that the question we have is the criteria. Is this something that we want to do? If not, then I think what we need to do is, as a group, say that's not what we're interested in, and then basically move on. And that way, we preserve the monies for specific city use. But I think what it comes down to is understanding, I guess, for us to really understand what is it that we're not doing, and for what reason. And I think Mr. Leonard did a very good job of explaining where the finances are. But if we feel that we need to preserve it for our next rainy, bad day, then maybe that's why we need to not approve this. But I think we need to set some sort of criteria as to why, this isn't something that's good for us right now.
Do we have any other comments before we field a motion?
You by chance know what the enrollment is for the daycare there?
I'm sorry, I do not.
That's okay. Thank you.
Mr. Engel?
If there's not any more discussion or questions, I'd like to make a motion to table this till we could end up and get more information out of it, see if we hear anything from people from outside from the Y and that, see what we can come up with.
Right. We have a motion to table. Do we have a second?
I'll see.
Seconded. Mr. Resty?
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Then we will table this item for later discussion.
Joe has a question or a comment.
Yes.
Are we looking to do like a study session, or are we coming back together as a council just to talk about this item? Or how do we plan on moving forward, or else basically letting it lie forever?
Well, Mr. Uresi, what the action that the council just took would require you to, or somebody to make a motion to take the matter off the table at a future council meeting. At that point, you could refer it to one of the liaison members for some kind of special meeting, special session of council to study the matter. Or you could debate it in front of the entire council as you did tonight.
So we could basically refer this to a study session of council as a whole?
Well, now that it's been tabled, you couldn't. Once you take it off the table, you could.
What would be your guidelines for having representatives from the Y here if they allow them to come? they offered to come this evening, but I knew we had restrictions on guests, so.
The council president can permit special guests who apply in advance to come address council as part of our regular agenda.
I was never contacted.
Right, and we have before. If this is an issue that we want discussion for, we discussed it this evening, tabled the item. If they wanted to request to be a special guest and come in and talk to us,
Okay.
it's perfectly acceptable.
Do we have to take it off the table for that to happen?
Yes.
Well, you would have to take it off the table to have a, lack
Well,
of a
if
better
the
term, a
wife
study
comes in and talks
session.
about it, do we have to have it off the table? Or
Not if they're a special guest.
Okay, so we can just leave it on the table.
If you want the liaison/study session, then you do have to take it off the
A
table.
motion during.
So we won't
session
have any
to
action
assign
on
to
when
a
they're here,
session.
we will just hear their pitch or whatever you want to call it.
Right, unless you move to take it off the table.
What liaison committee would that be?
It could be economic development, finance and budget, public relations. I think there's a couple you could pigeonhole that in. Those are the three that come to mind. You could also form a separate committee of, as a whole.
That way it covers everything.
Correct.
And we could do that if the YMCA comes in, we decide to take it off the table and basically bring it to a study session to finish whatever it is that we have concerns with.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Essentially having a guest in, hearing what they have to
Then we
say.
can make a consideration at that point.
Right.
And if it's, we have enough votes, then we move forward. If not, then it dies at that point.
Yep.
That the way it would be?
Yes.
Okay.
It sounds like a good plan. All right. And our last item up for discussion this evening?
First reading by caption only, a resolution supporting the Defiance County Canal Road Shoulder Enhancement Project.
Mr. Donald.
Some of you who have been on council for a couple of years now have seen this resolution before. It is for a competitive grant program that ODOT funds annually that pays for transportation projects that promote travel other than by the automobile. Particularly, they look at the bicycle, pedestrian, and wheelchair-friendly attributes to the project. And so the Defiance County engineer is looking at this particular program to pave Canal Road from Ball Road out in Defiance Township up to Jackson Avenue on the city municipal boundary. And it's going to be, the plan would be for wide-end shoulders, much like you see on East River Drive. And these wide-end shoulders, like East River Drive, would become part of that Buckeye and North Country Scenic Trails. And all this is tonight is a resolution pledging your support for the Defiance County Engineer's application to the Ohio Department of Transportation, and also expresses your willingness to provide access to the city portion of that road, of that right-of-way. And should the county receive this grant, all it would do is spare the city of the expense of paving its own portion of that Canal Road right-of-way.
Do we have any questions? Mr. Waxler?
No further question, motion suspend and call. Oh, John, you got a question?
Yeah, it's just, this is just, I know that the old canal runs next to Canal Road. This isn't where the old tow path is on the canal. This is actually on the road itself, similar to what we have on River Road. Is that correct?
They're just waiting.
Okay.
That's my understanding, yeah, they would have like pedestrian and bicycle lanes if you want to side.
From
They get
Clinton
onto the dam.
to the dam.
Yeah, it will not be a separate path, it would be connected to the road.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? So, Mr. Waxler, you had a motion to suspend and call?
Yes.
Second, Mr. Uresti?
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Matt?
Yes.
And
Motion adopt.
motion to adopt, Mr. Engel, A second.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
And this resolution is adopted. With the legislative items addressed, we have, and before we adjourn, we usually have a time for citizens' concerns. Have any members of council been approached or emailed or asked to bring an issue of citizens' concern before council? I ask dramatically because I have. I received an email that states, Dear Council, my name is John Retcher. I am emailing you today about the amount of white-tailed deer in the town. I know years ago when I first started hunting, they had a season or two of urban tags for archery season where we could hunt deer in the city limits, and that is pretty much taking care of it. I know for a fact there are 30 to 40 plus deer by my residence, and that they are tearing up the yards and eating our gardens and literally laying in the backyards. I know I have heard from several folk who say the same thing. I don't know what the process is to see about getting them tags back for the city of Defiance, but I would be interested in getting it done if possible. Thanks for reading my concerns. So, urban tags for hunting deer with my bow in city limits.
I don't recall it, Mr. Rusty.
Now, a question for yourself though, it's like, do we have anything, I know, out by your area, there's a lot of deer in your area. My wife and I drive around town, we like to see where they gather and run across the across the street, trying to miss our cars, but I guess, is there something that the city's considering or thinking about doing something in regards with the county or anything?
First of all, the last statistic I saw, and I wouldn't want to get quoted on this, but I probably will, so I'll just go ahead and say it. The car deer accidents inside the city of Defiance, just within our borders, are up significantly. I'm thinking maybe even double. Yet, in our discussions with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, the Deer Control Division of all of that, they say we don't have a deer problem in Defiance County. We may not in the county, but in the city with the higher volume of car deer accidents, we obviously do in the city. So I certainly agree with what Mr. Retcher said, but we can appeal to them again. It's probably been a year since we last spoke with them about the issue, looking for some sort of a relief. And I had a conversation with someone recently that thought they had an inroad with folks in the ODNR that maybe would help us. I will tell you right now, communicating with Columbus on any matter, any division, is difficult because most of them are still working from home. We have things that are pending out there that we're having trouble getting answers on because they don't assemble in an office anymore and make decisions. But you're right, Mr. Rusty. You don't drive very fast going home after city council tonight. I'll tell you when you're heading out my way. And there's a lot of deer. There's signs of those deer in my yard as well. When we build our home, we're very careful what we planted, consulting with a landscaper that was stuff that deer didn't like to eat. So we've been pretty lucky there. But suppose they don't like hostas, but they eat Mr. Leonard's hostas. So they at least like Mr. Leonard's hostas. So we will look into it. I'm just going to have to ask for some patience. And I told my wife the other night when we were driving home, I said, so far at least, this winter hasn't done anything to cull the herd because it's been so mild. That's as much as I can tell you.
Mayor, you may want to get in contact with, I don't know if it'd be Dave Mast or anybody out to the fishing game, because we have the ODNR guy out there usually once or every couple of months he comes out and speaks, so they got a good contact there.
Okay,
I'm just saying, you
We,
know.
we had him here at City Hall. He spoke at
Okay.
he spoke at Rotary, and we then invited him in here to have this discussion with him. And believe it or
So
not,
you got a
it's,
contact number?
yeah, it's,
Okay.
it's the health department where we get these statistics. I really don't want to bother the health department right now. I kind of figure they got enough to do, but it's the folks at the health department where we get these statistics about car deer accidents. And the last I received them pre-COVID, they were alarming. They were. The numbers had gone up dramatically.
I just want to make sure you had a number of the ODNR.
Yep, we got her. Thank you.
Mrs. Crutch?
I know I had talked to the mayor about this about a year and a half ago, and I'd written the ODR. And I don't know how many times in emails I've tried calling, haven't gotten through. But the deer population is huge, and I know in DeKalb County in Indiana, they have where you could urban have bow and arrow time, just like 1 or 2 days, and then most of the meat is donated to like the Path Center or to whatever so that, and I tried the Ohio Division and telling them those things for Defiance City, but like I said, I didn't get anywhere with anybody.
We'll have some leverage now. I'll send them a newspaper article. It'll be in today's paper.
There you go.
Right. With any other citizens' concerns? All right, with that, do we have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Waxler, and a second. Mr. Hancock. All those in favor of adjourning for this evening, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Yeah, no, you said we spent a lot of money to get this updated.
That's
Let me talk.
the sell.
That's pretty funny though. Aye.
Bye.